Good evening, viewers. Welcome to another edition of State of Affairs. On this edition, I'm sitting in for Mr. Aliu Sise, my co-host, who is out of town. Aliu, we are missing you. I'll be joined by Mr. Mamadou Mboj, my able co-host. Mr. Mboj, welcome to the State of Affairs.
Oh, I'm glad to be here.
Thanks so much, Mr. Mboj. In the studio, we have Mr. Karamba Toure, who is the head of the National Audit Office. Mr. Toure, welcome to the State of Affairs.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mboj. Thank you very much, Mr. Toure. Mr. Toure, let me congratulate you. I guess you were the National Audit Office of the Gambia wins the prestigious prize for Performance Audit Report 2020. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Mr. Mboj, we'll just drive in. It's 55 minutes.
Okay.
So it's not a lot of time, and we have a lot to talk about. If I start, Mr. Toure, the National Audit Office report on government, COVID-19 response phase 1 procurement and distribution of food and medical items, Minister Samade described the report as deeply shocking and premeditated to tarnish the government's image. The auditors refused to take on board the most tangible testimonies and supporting documents the ministry presented to them. How would you respond to the minister's accusations?
Well, thank you very much for that question. Essentially, let me first state that the audit processes are very transparent. As public auditors, we actually go an extra length to reach to the logical conclusions of specific issues that we raise with the auditees. That's why our audits tend to take a little bit longer than a commercial auditor would have done. When this COVID emergency first appeared around the middle of March, in April, I wrote to key stakeholders advising them about the emergency issues and the necessary pitfall that could come in terms of emergency procurement, and also advising them that we have sufficient guidance in our financial regulations and procurement regulations to guide the process, that we can do it within the regulations that we have. Although there is no specific provision for emergency procurement also, there are sufficient guidance in the regulations to take us through those things. That was the first thing we do, and shared it with our partners so that they are mindful of it. And also made ourselves available for any advice and support in case they have doubts into what they are doing. So the engagements with us are very transparent, and it's about questions. We don't create these things. All that we do is to ask questions so that we reach the logical conclusions. And if you look at our reports, which speak for themselves, we have both what we observe and the comments of the auditees there. Where we don't agree, we do an additional comment on that side. Essentially, that is it. So our reports speak for ourselves. I think the process was fair and transparent. We have invited all, including the World Bank, the World Bank representative at the Ministry of Health was invited to our office, and we had an engagement with them. Yeah.
I mean, just quickly, the minister did say the auditors refused to take on board most of the tangible testimonies and supporting documents the ministry presented to them. Can we get this clearer? Did you refuse to take on board?
Essentially what I'm saying, no. We are asking questions. We cannot refuse to accept presentations. Then we will not complete our audit if you don't. We have. In fact, the audit was prolonged largely because of Ministry of Health. We had at some point, when my staff said, I said, no, get every information that they can provide. Because when we write our report, we share with you. They will say they have additional information. I said, bring them up. So that we included, they are investigated, and if they are relevant to that particular issue, they are taken on board. That's it. We are public auditors, and our primary is to safeguard the resources of government. How can you make a presentation and evidence, and we reject? Particularly where
all your demands been submitted to you, as far as requests is concerned from the Ministry of Health?
No, the report is a source of outstanding issues that have not been resolved. Where they are resolved, they don't even come into our report. Anything that you see in the report are outstanding issues that have not been resolved. Yeah, and those things that we have reached the logical conclusion to establish that this is what happened. Those are the ones that you have there.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mboj.
So do you mean that there was at no given point did they bring any document
that was refused. No.
And you refused?
No, it did not happen. It is not accurate.
That's it. So this is quite interesting because here the minister is saying that the report was premeditated to tarnish the government's reputation. So this is not simply about methods. It's about your own motives, it seems as if you've got this malice aforethought. Yes. What do you think about that?
Let me say the facts as they happen. We are political and credibility matters because we represent the citizens of the country. So the credibility of the office matters. The report was completed in May. It wasn't published until after the elections. So if there is any intention to tarnish, we would have brought it out earlier, before even the election. So there was no intention to tarnish. The report was completed in May of 2021, and we shared with the partners before we sent it to printing. After we sent it to printing, the issue that came into our mind was that, look, we have a report that could be very controversial. You have two scenarios: to be ropist or weaponized. So if you have to balance it. We don't want the report to be rubbished. We also don't want it to be weaponized. So we have to strike a balance, and we manage to keep this report under cover until after the elections before we release it. So that's important. So if there was any intention to tarnish, you know what we would have done. We would have shared it with the public even before anything, before the election, because that was the idea.
As a head of an institution, when you have a state minister labeling your institution as you have premeditated to tarnish the image of the sitting government, how does that make you feel as head of an institution?
You see, as Supreme Court is on tensions, I think tensions between National Audit Office and the executive is a necessary tension that need to be managed. And it is not new for us, for the personalities to be attacking sort of issues. So we tend to, not to disregard them, but we want to make sure that our report speaks for us, rather than us going on the defensive. Our report is our natural recourse to answer those questions. If you are done it, the people are there. When they read, they will be the judge for that one. So it doesn't... because we are all human beings, it doesn't bother us to that extent. It is not a new thing. It's not a new thing for us.
I mean, earlier on you talk about the timing of the report. You could have put this report out, say, for example, last May.
Exactly.
Or you could have, you waited till after the election to put it out because you don't want it to be rubbish or to be weaponized. But what we have seen recently, when your report came out, other camp have rubbished it, others have used it as a weapon. So, you know, you actually didn't have a win-win here.
Yeah,
so the timing doesn't actually matter. Whether you have brought it in May or you brought it now, what you are trying to run away from actually did happen. It has been rubbish at some quarters. It has been used as a weapon at some quarters. Actually, do you agree?
But yes, I do. But I agree that there are fair-minded people who come alert and say, no, this is not what happened. This is the case. You have seen that also in social media. People coming to the defense of the national government. They say, no, it wasn't like that. It was so and so, making reference to our report. So that is important.
Mr. Boyd?
Yes. Let's go through some of the specific accusations from the minister. That the way the media conference, the way you launched it, there was a media conference, calling it what? Uncommon in the history of its work. How do you normally launch these reports?
Yeah, let me also say that's also not accurate.
It's not.
The first one we did was the 2016 Audit Financial Statement when we invited the organization. And let me tell you, we launched this, but the audit process has been exhausted. The National Assembly has already discussed this report. It is exhausted completely. So essentially, it's go to our, how do you call it, to the citizens. It's an obligation. There are standards that we also have to adhere with. There is this standard ISSAI P12. That is, how do you call it? size benefit to citizens. What it requires for us is to engage the stakeholders. And our key stakeholder in this is the citizens. How do we reach the citizens? We cannot go to every village and be talking to them. We thought the media is the best conveyance of that information to the citizens and the civil society organization. And in that gathering, we did not only invite, we also invited the executive to the meeting, although they did not return, but we were invited. So it wasn't as if we were hiding or to tarnishing. Essentially, is to make the public aware, to put pressure on their elected representatives, so that those people will also put, pressure on the executive to act on the recommendations of the audit. And so that we improve the livelihood of every citizen of the country in terms of managing our resources. That was the idea. So, and let me say also that we are going to continue on this basis.
Thank you very much, Mr. Toure. You just said this is not the first time. You did this in 2016.
Yeah, I did in 2016.
Yeah. That was
on the public accounts of the Gambia.
2016 when? Actually, is it with this transitional government or is it before the transitional government?
That was also an issue. That is after the transitional government. During the previous regime, we were not doing this. Reaching out to the public, to the media, and this only started now.
Can we say that is attributed to the free environment?
Absolutely. But in terms of reporting, we were doing the same reporting that we do, even in the previous regime. What comes to mind is the sale of Gamtel. Yeah, for example, if you go to our reports, you will see that
these reports were made public. They were more public then.
No, we did not engage them in this manner.
In this manner. This is actually taking place because you feel that you are not on the threat, or the environment is very conducive.
No, actually, it's part of our strategic imperatives. We have prepared a strategic development. Of course, we have been preparing. This time, we included a strategy to engage the civil rights organization and the media. It's a strategic imperative for us because that will raise the profile of the office. At the same time, it will also put pressure on this, people entrusted with our resources to be aware, knowing that we will reach out to the public once these reports are discussed.
But this strategic idea that you have, you thought of it now because the environment is there, just to be clear.
I'm not so very, that's the right way to put it, because like I said, this, as I'm quoting, emerges since they were there since 1975. It is they call the Mexico Declaration. It is there since then, advising people to engage the citizens, because that's our primary objective, to make sure that the lives of citizens are improved through our audit interactions. So it is there. But of course, you know that the previous environment, it was not conducive to perhaps to those things. Maybe you can even put the media into trouble or yourself. You haven't done it during that previous process. That's when I agree. But our reporting was consistent. That has never changed.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mbun.
For me now, let's put it this way. I'm curious about something. Just walk us through the whole process. Yes, you get a project, something that you need to audit. How do you engage? What are the steps that you take? Do they have a time frame that you must provide such and such a document within a particular date and stuff like that? How does it work? What are the steps of auditing an organization?
Yeah, of course. First, we write an engagement letter and we provide timelines as to when all the information that the request should have been provided. But nevertheless, we do, most of the time, we go beyond that timeline, considering that we, like I said, we are public auditors, supreme audit institutions. Yeah. So usually we are given that time. But when we do give timelines, like for audits. Once you bring information outstanding and you have got, we take additional information. And when we do these things too, once we concluded, a draft is sent to you. If you have additional information during that time, you do supply and we look at it.
So for instance, if you give me a timeline and I default, then I say, please extend it. I keep on extending. At some point, you will say, no, that's it. This is it. We are going ahead with the report.
Yeah, we will do that. Yeah, because like I said, the audits cannot be never open-ended. Otherwise, you do it end. Yeah, at some point we have to. There will be a cutoff. We have to draw a line to see this is it. Yeah.
So with this particular auditing, this process, what were some of your experiences dealing with this particular audit?
With regards to, access to information was difficult.
It was difficult.
Very difficult, that's what we experienced in this, largely, and that's the basis of most of the findings that we can, access to information was.
So if you go back to that, when you talk about access to information, do you negotiate to access to information, or do you have powers to get this information?
Yes, the law says we should. When we ask, it should be given.
You should be given, but you're having trouble with it.
Sometimes you do have.
Earlier on, we talked about the Ministry of Health and the minister having an issue with the report. Has there been any other institution that had similar contempt or similar issue regarding the report?
No, I think only the issue of the the reaction of the minister. That's only we are aware of. What does me, but we haven't. No, we haven't heard of it. I haven't heard of it anyway.
Quickly, you state in your report that there is a general lack of accountability in almost all sectors. That is the major problem. Most of the time, there is lack of action. How best can this situation be remedied? Do you need to change or amend the legal framework? Do we need to change or amend the legal framework?
I think there's sufficient guidance in the legal. People usually think that these are about regulation. No, we have sufficient guidance in those regulations to do. It's lack of implementation. That's the major problem. The accountability cycle cannot be completed except the recommendations are treated too. That is how they call it, implementing those recommendations that we made. And usually that can only be enforced by the National Assembly. So when the reports, once they discuss, they write their report. In the previous regime, although people don't like to, but there was usually a task force after audit reports are discussed. A task force usually set up to enforce the implementation of recommendations. That's what used to happen. They have abandoned that during the last 5 years, but I hope they take it up, because otherwise, then we will not move. It becomes how do you call it, a recurring problem, because they are not treated very well to their logical conclusion. I think the accountability cycle will be completed. Once the audit is done, the National Assembly, they need to have a report to say on those recommendations.
We've seen recently too, from your press conference, and looking at your report, you talked about backlog of audits. What were the reasons why some of these institutions weren't audited on time? The timing seems to be an issue here, because if you talk about engaging the public, most of these institutions, for example, if you have lived in, if you happen to miss a couple of years to audit them, some of those who were in those offices may never be there again.
Indeed.
They may move on to other things.
Indeed.
So if you come to do the audit exercise and they are found wanting, how are we going to make them responsible?
Let me tell you that the responsibility of preparing financial statements it's not that of audit, it's the institution. And all of them are in areas, including the central government. We are currently looking at 2020 financial statements and 2022. That's what we are. But of course, we have come from a backlog situation, even for government. When we started, government did not prepare financial statement for more than 10 years. So we had to work in collaboration with Treasury Director at the time to build up the accounts for those years and begin the audit. We are catching up. Hopefully, in this year or next, we will be able to get out from that backlog situation. But if you look at the predecessors, almost all of us are in backlog situations.
What is responsible for that? Why? Well,
it's lack of accountability, because we have regulations that prescribe how these things, when this should be prepared and when this should be presented. If that did not happen, what should we do?
Yes. I'm wondering here. One of the minister's reasons, he said, especially during the procurement period, when buying certain items, certain materials, was that because of the emergency situation. So perhaps they had to bypass, for instance, approval from GPPA and stuff like that. But surely there must be a provision in there dealing with emergency procurements. Is that true or false?
Unfortunately, there is not in our public procurement regulations. But if you look at our report too.
So when he said that he was relying on emergency laws, somewhere he's quoted, he said there's a particular one regarding, I think, the World Bank grant.
Yeah, but our reports rubbish that.
So there is no law. There's no such law.
Although they said it was an emergency, it took longer than even if any other thing. It wasn't an emergency, essentially. That's what the report said.
So that's a curious one. Yeah. There's no such thing as an emergency law. So with you now, with the powers that you have, once you submit your report, because during this whole saga, the idea of an account that you had advised them to close was still open. So one wonders, once you've taken your report, what other powers do you have? How do you follow up? Is it structurally built into the way you work on this advice that you give government? How come you advise them to close the account and it's still open?
Yes. Actually, we are a reporting agency, and we report to the National Assembly, the chief auditors. That's the National Assembly, particularly the Public Account Committee. That's what we report to, and this report are shared with them. And I think it is arranged in such a way that once this report, they needed to look at them and then also make their own recommendation or write their own report based on those that is done. And that's why I'm saying that it is not completed until that report is done for action, the implementation.
With this kind of account, who's got the authority to decide whether it opens or not?
Usually the authority will be the accounting officer. In the case of, for example, the Ministry of Finance, the accounting officer will be the permanent secretary. In the office of the president, it is the secretary general. Yeah.
Even do we know who opened it, who continued to use it? Was it the Minister of Finance, the president? Do we know?
In our report, again, it is in the report. It is opened by the office of the president, but it was approved by the Minister of Finance. That is what we said in our report, meaning that, how do you call it, the permanent secretary has given his consent to the opening of the account. Yeah.
Did you know about it prior to the...
Yes, people asked that question too. They said, why 2012 now? You recall in the Janneh Commission that a number of reports have come out that we were not aware of. Yeah. So this was, for me, I thought the commission should have actually fined the banks for failure to disclose those information, because every year, when we are looking at the public house of the Gambia, we send requests to all the banks to supply us with all the government accounts that they have so that they can be audited, including the central bank. That's what happened with this account. It was never shared with us until after 2016. That's why it is in the 2017 report. We will send requests, but we have never received this account. That's why we could not audit it before that. Otherwise, if you had come, we would have audited it during that period, because no stone is left unturned, even in the previous regime, in terms of after auditing. I've been looking at public accounts. We have done whatever we are supposed to do during that period. But of course, when it is not shared with you, we would not,
So in that, when it's not shared with you, the failure here, who are those responsible?
In this case, it will be the central bank, because when we requested, they were obliged to give us those information that this account existed. So if they did not, well, it's a concealment of a pertinent fact, because those are public funds. It needs to be shared with us.
And you were able to know about this account after 2016?
Yeah, absolutely.
Before 2016, you made numerous requests, and it never came to light.
Every time we do the public accounts, we ask for balances, account numbers and balances of public accounts. Yeah.
But it was never available?
It was never available, yeah. Including the ones that are revealed at the Janneh Commission. All of those accounts we've never seen. They do give us some accounts, but this one, so meaning that they all have an idea about this account.
So there were some public officers who micromanage those accounts?
Absolutely.
One wonders, in your long experience of auditing public institutions, how common is that in our constitution, in our institutions, where they have accounts that they're trying to conceal from the National Audit Office?
It is not common. It is illegal, so it's not common. Because essentially, the Accountant General need to know that he did not know. If you look at our report, he did not know that this account existed. And he was the one who manages our accounts at the central bank. He did not know that it existed according to his response. So it was concealed from both the Paymaster General and the Audit Office. So it is not common, and it is unusual. It raises suspicions, of course, when about accountability.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mbot. Let's look at the working of the National Audit Office. How is the National Audit Office, how do you manage yourself?
We have a board. That is when we move out from the central government. Initially, we were part of the central government. We only had our autonomy in 2015. Okay. That is the National Audit Office Act when it was promulgated. So it's the National Assembly who manages us. They provide auditors for us. They audit our accounts. The National Assembly appoint auditors to audit our accounts. Yeah, so these are the ones that we report to. We also have a board that assists me in terms of managing the office. Yeah. Essentially, that is it.
That's it. But within as well, the internal structures. Who are the auditors who would go out? Who would supervise them? Because we understand. Remember one of the accusations, the allegations against you, the minister made was that, you had sent 3 young auditors. He questioned their experience in doing such a complex tax. So that's it. How do you assign tasks?
Yeah.
What is the monitoring mechanism in place? And then all the filters, the accountability filters within?
We have a number of units in the office. We have one that deals with ministries and departments and also the public accounts of the Gambia. Then we have one that does performance audits. These are selected topics and issues, like the one that we won, which did with maternal mortality. So selected topics that we discuss and agree that this is important, it's a burning issue, let's look at it, and then we discuss. We have done one on recently on ports, the handling. We have just done one, and its impact on the economy. So, and we have what is called extraneous. These are other audits that are also outside. These are some vetted issues, government agencies that are outside the ministries and departments. And then we have one for area councils. We have a special dedicated unit for area councils. The accounting at area councils is poor, but we are helping each other to bring it up so that they are also able to prepare credible financial statements. So these are the units that you have. But in the selection of this audit, this is categorized as special audit. There's no dedicated unit for special audits. We take our key qualified people, those who are very vast in that auditing, and form them into a group to carry out the audits with reporting lines and so on. That's what happened here. So these are some of our best candidates that were sent to carry out these audits.
So as you said, there are reporting lines.
Absolutely.
So I take it that before you publish,
yes,
it would have gone through different layers of filtering.
Indeed.
So in the end, you would have to take the decision that you had conformed to all the standards, if you like, of doing these things properly before finally you publish.
You publish it, absolutely. We are doing the second phase of this COVID audit. The last one is the media organizations, money given to media like yourselves and whatever. Once that is completed, we are going to compile that report too, and it will be out very soon. Hopefully. That's the second and last phase of the COVID. It's not finished yet.
Yeah, exactly. So you've got phase 2 to go.
Absolutely.
So, and here when we say publish, that means not simply submitting it to the National Assembly. Maybe you download it on your website and everybody will have access to it. Is that what it means?
After discussion, the National Assembly, because we are also obliged by regulation not to publish before discussion of the National Assembly, except where there is undue delay. Now, who defines undue delay? Yeah. So there's no specific time. But yeah, after the discussion with National Assembly, then we publish.
So you need the authority of the National Assembly to publish. Is that essentially what you're saying?
Not necessarily the authority, but they need to discuss it. Because it's about dissemination of information. Yeah. When you publish before the National Assembly, it can preempt certain actions. That's what I think the drafters of concern we are preempting, so that it doesn't go out of the one. Once they discuss, there is public property.
But that is not a legal requirement. Maybe it's just a convention, is it?
No, it's a legal requirement.
It's a legal requirement.
In the Constitution, yeah. It's a Constitution.
We'll come back. We'll go for a short commercial break, and then we'll be back. You were watching State of Affairs. I'm sitting in for Mr. Ali Sise. We'll be back after a short commercial break.
Looking for the fastest and easiest way to receive money transfers from abroad? Well, QMoney and RIA just made it happen. Now you can receive international money transfer from RIA directly into your QMoney account with no additional cost. Once you receive an SMS alert about your transfer, walk into any QMoney agent across the country to receive your payment for free, or use the money immediately to buy credit, QPower, and other QMoney services. It's fast, safe, and convenient. For more info, call customer care on 133. QMoney, Sinu Kalpe. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome back, viewers, after that short commercial break. Mr. Mboj, we just follow on to that. Mr. Ture, do you want to respond to Mr. Mboj?
Yeah, just in terms of publishing too, apart from our website, we also deposit these documents at the National Library for posterity. So there are always 2 copies that we send. This is also in accordance with the National Library Act, that any report that is published, government report, should be, so we also deposit our documents at the National Library. If you go there, they should have a stock of beginning from 2017 when we begin to produce credible financial statements. So it should be at the National Library too.
Exactly. And I mean, when I look at the scale of what you need to do, all these government institutions, how are you for staff and capacity?
Yeah, capacity is a central thing in our thing. As we speak,
because whether we trust it will depend on the competence and proficiency of the institution itself. So how are you for staff
We have come a very long way in National Audit Office, really. We partner with AfroSci. This is the organization that we have just hosted. And let me tell you, it's one of the strongest organizations in the world now in terms of providing capacity building to supreme audit institutions. It is a sub-language group of AfroSci, which is the continental body. It's headquartered in South Africa. Beginning from, I think this was since 2005, I think, 2003, 2005. We have regular capacity building programs. As we speak now, we have AfroSci staff in my office helping my people in terms of training. And we partner with other countries like UK. There is a staff from UK in the office now currently assisting. We have one from Latvia, of course, a program of IDI. IDI, the Intersci Development Initiative. Intersci is the world body of supreme audit institutions. They have sent in a staff that is also currently in the office in helping in terms. So capacity building is a regular, how do you call it, a theme in our office. Currently, what we are doing is to have a training of trainers. So we are preparing a dedicated core staff that will continue to improve the skills and of my staff. We have selected very good individuals to be trained to train. In addition to their work, they will be also training staff regularly. We have been doing it, but not as professionals. Now we are trying to professionalize their other services from experts to help them to know how to train generally in all aspects. Not only, of course, on audit, because we now know it's not only our technical competence that need matter. We know communication matter, we know HR matter. So even communication staff, we have one from Kenya that is helping my communication unit in terms of how to interact with media. Maybe when next I come, I'll be more professional in terms of interaction with you people. They would have taught me a lot about.
Thank you very much.
Just one more, talking about communications here. How active is your website?
Very.
Do you constantly upload all these reports which will help citizens, journalists or civil society organizations, for everybody?
Please go there. It is there,
Okay.
And we are on Twitter too.
Wonderful.
We are on Twitter.
Mr. Ture, are there any limit on what funds you can audit?
No.
You can audit.
There is no limit.
Okay.
There is no limit.
So the aid, whatever money comes in there for government to use.
Yes,
for public funds.
Public funds.
That's it.
So you can
public funds, And anywhere where government have a minority interest, even if it is 1%, the law said I can go there and audit on behalf of government.
Okay.
And you audit all government entities. Any limits?
No, there are no limits.
Central
but of
Bank,
course, we cannot do all of them at the same time. So we tend to,
when you talk about, for a layman, when you talk about public funds, can you just elaborate a bit?
This is money owned by the government on behalf of the citizens of the country. It's just not private funds, like loans that the country receives or grants, whatever, or the revenues that they raise. Yeah.
You talked earlier about the local authorities, the councils.
Yes. Councils, yes.
We have seen in the report, the auditor report of the council before the National Assembly.
Yes.
I wouldn't call it disgraceful, but
Yes.
it's disheartening.
Yes, yes.
And you earlier talked about you are trying to help them to come up.
We are helping.
I mean, you've been here for some time now. What have you been doing to help our area councils?
Yeah, that's why I said we never had a dedicated unit for area councils. This was only created recently.
Why? Why this was not there?
You know, I think area councils. Well, I wouldn't know what was in the mind of the President Solicitor General, but area council is. I'm not so whether they take them very seriously.
Oh, it's like, it's area council, don't bother with them.
Council, I don't think they have been taken very seriously in terms of how they can contribute. We are seeing it differently, that they are, how do you call it, important components of governance.
But they are taking millions of taxpayers' money. So
yeah.
they should be taken
and
seriously.
They are very close to the people. In fact, if you look at the local government act that was promulgated around 2002,
yeah.
It was a very good document, but implementation was the issue. Most of its parts have not been implemented. Decentralization did not work. But because there are a lot of capacity issues with the area councils in terms of preparing, how do you call it, credible accounts. What the local government act envisage, if you do that now currently, you will end up in chaos. For example, if you, in a region, if you transfer the payment of teachers to a local government, there could be dangers that
they have their financial directors.
They have, but they need some capacity development really to come up to task. As the reports would clearly indicate, they need some capacity development, a lot of capacity development to bring them up to task, to be able to prepare that. And if you don't do it, there will be continuous failure in terms of providing services to local people, because as I said, they are the closest people to our local people. And they actually said that 60% of the revenue that they generate should go back to the communities that they exist. That is not happening.
So it's like for the longest time, the National Audit Office have been doing the top-bottom approach, not the bottom-top approach.
Yeah, actually, all that we do is formally is not very little engagement from auditing exercise. We are going beyond that now in terms of helping them to build up accounts. And have to dedicate it. Because we are public auditors.
To conclude, I mean, you've given them the room to do whatever they wanted to do for the longest time.
Previously, no, we do report. We do report, but they do not use to prepare financial statements. Now they are trying to prepare one. So they are
trying to now.
Yes.
So we still not get there yet.
Yes, because of the credibility issue with some of the financial statements that come out. But we work with them to try to clean it up and bring it. Well, government was like this before 2017. Yeah. That's what we did with the central government itself. Clean the accounts so that credible balance are able to be transferred to the new system that we are using, IFMIS, before we started. If the government was like that, you have huge amounts that had no basis. There was no money in the coffers. But the books will tell you there is so much amount in it. We have to cleanse it, take it to the National Assembly to approve before we begin the nuclear. So they are, and I understand they will be coming on to IFMIS. So we'll have to do the same thing for the councils too. IFMIS is, the Accountant General is working with them to bring their system on the IFMIS platform. That will require correct and credible, figures. So the currency will have to come for them too.
Exactly. So here I'm inclined to say that, yes, credibility, hugely important, but it appears that credibility will depend on how independent people perceive the NAO to be. How independent, yes, the perceptions, always, you have to deal with that, don't you? Yeah. That's it. So how independent is the FAO?
NAO.
Are you politically active? It's your right to be. What party do you belong to? I don't know. We are told that in such positions, you must be politically neutral. How independent is the National Audit Office?
I think the office is very independent. I think we have tried to also dispense that public, perception by acting very neutral. neutral in whatever we do. We of course, everybody, we don't even discuss political issues. Everybody have a right to belong to whatever, but you don't bring it to the office, essentially. Because like we said, credibility matters. So that, like I said, rubbish or weaponized, because that's where, depending on where you start. So if we saw political callers, it would be easy for people to simply look at us and say, no, this is not the case. And this, even in the previous regime, we have tried to maintain that influence. We have dragged. That's why we don't go to meetings. Even in the previous regime, I have never attended any meeting. I don't use so. Naturally, I don't go to political rallies. But we don't even before. And not now. We are not going to any for this. You will not see it on political callers. We all keep wherever we support to ourselves, I think. We don't even discuss it. Yeah.
Have you had experiences where authority or a person you're investigating would sort of put pressure on you?
Politically.
Either maybe to delay a publication or perhaps even to shelf it. Have you had inappropriate pressure on you from public authorities?
Currently, we did not have, but I recall that we once had a report that was rejected by National Assembly saying that it has political bearings. They would not discuss. That happened before.
This was during the previous regime,
yeah. I made a report that they rejected. They said they will not discuss because according to them it has some political connotation. Whatever that means. I don't know.
Yes, part of independence, of course, will involve the financial element.
Yes.
Where do you get your funding? Is it through the Ministry of Finance or consolidated from where do you get your funding?
Again, the law is very clear with how we are funded. It's the National Assembly. It says that when I have my budget, I present it to the President. It also says the President cannot change anything in my budget. But he can comment, of course, whatever it is, and send it to the National Assembly. The National is the final say to determine what I get. So they are the ones who can reduce or increase what I get. Yeah.
That's it.
That's the regulation. So, and that's what is happening now.
Okay, so everything goes to the National Assembly oversight there. I wonder, would you say that you've got security of tenure?
Africa is a special case. Even if you have security of tenure, it can be overridden. Currently, as we speak, one of my colleagues in Sierra Leone is suspended. I recall another colleague in Ghana was asked to go on extended leave. Ghana, now there is a new Auditor General. Now they said, in fact, he is due for retirement. He did not take his leave, so he retired them. So even if no amount of regulation will stop a particular executive to say, okay, let's leave it. That's because how I don't know how secure, but we have enough guidance in the regulations in terms of security of tenure. In our regulations, he said it cannot be removed also by the Constitution. But if we go on to say in any work to say that in the case of mental illness, a board have to be set up, medical board, have to be set up. Instead of incompetence, it needs to set up professionals, accountants, and whatever. Too. But of course, in Africa, all of these things could be overridden and say, you will go home.
Because here, you asked the question earlier, but the wider implications. I mean, your history, your experience, we've seen during the select committees, we've been seeing the reports given by the NAO and the like, and your statement, there is a general lack of accountability in almost all sectors. That is a scary, scary business. So it's all pervasive. It's almost like an endemic, in an epidemic, as it were.
I don't know. Essentially what you wanted to say that there must be a consequence for our actions. If there is no consequence for our actions, that's a general lack of accountability, period.
What do you mean by that?
For example,
where should the consequences come from? You said there's no action.
Exactly.
Who would you point to that the person who should act?
Likely, like I said, we have the National Assembly as our chief auditors. These are the ones we report to, and they are expected to act on the reports that we share with them. Essentially, that is the issue. They are the ones who have made the final recommendations to do this.
I mean, have you ever involved the police in any of your findings or in any of your report recommendation for it to be referred to the police?
Yes.
Okay.
We have.
What happened after those reports to the police?
I know now they have come back to us with, I think, 2 of the reports to say that they have not found anything.
But you found something?
Indeed.
And they say they've not found anything?
Yeah. I can recall, I can remember 2
And who are these 2 reports? For public disclosure, we need to know.
I know one was on OP. This was one was on OP. I think the other one was
OP meaning Office of the President.
Office of the President. Yeah, one was on OP at the time. I don't recall what was the other one.
How long ago was this? How long ago was this?
It took some. This was about. I think it's around 2016 when we started the report with them. Around 2016.
Because the former regime.
And and of course a little part of the current regime.
Okay.
Yeah. I think Minister of Environment too, on this timber and whatever. Yeah.
Okay.
We have reports there are other reports that are also in court. Some of them as far back as 2014.
When you talk about, my colleague earlier talked about capacity.
Yeah.
When you refer these audits to the police,
yes.
In your thinking, do you think the police have the capacity in terms of, forensic auditors to look at, some of these, finance?
There's a lack of capacity indeed. We are aware of that.
So you agree with me that the police doesn't have the capacity to
look at there are some of those in the capacity lack, and there is also a general lack of interaction between them and us. Once we give it to them, usually they don't come back to us for clarification. There's no interaction until they complete. And I think that's where the problem lies, because we are the authors. I think we need to be constantly engaged,
of course,
in terms of those issues. Yeah. And that is also a failure on our part. I think we need to work on that by engaging the Inspector General of Police in terms of how do we manage these things going forward? Once these reports are shared, we do what is our expectation and their expectation, so that we smoothen that out.
So if the police come back to you, if the police come back to you and said, we found nothing out of this report, that's the end game.
That's the end of it. Yeah, that's the end of it. Yeah, indeed, that's the end of it. There is also one thing that I should have disclosed. That is that I am allowed to surcharge. The concern say that I can surcharge. But the concern doesn't say how I can surcharge. So what we have done is to draft an additional amendment to the Act to see how that surcharge could work. But we do, of course, need to agree with the partners that this is the best way forward. Our partners, I mean the executive, the Minister of Finance and so on. And we have shared this document with them to look at it. Once they are comfortable with it, we'll agree, and then we'll put it on so that we can surcharge.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. So I've got here 2 questions. The follow-up. Do you have within your own structures where you follow up, whether they come to you or not? That's
difficult.
Do you have that one?
We don't. Usually we do follow up when we go back to audit, and that may take another year. For example, when we do our audit and send our report, a follow-up is not done until we come back to do the, because always when we are auditing, we look at the outstanding issues previously and then first work on that to see whether they are implemented before we can proceed. So it is difficult. We don't do that. Yeah.
Yes. And the second one, the legal framework. Do you think what you've mentioned, one amendment, we need to amend that to strengthen, as it were, your role, isn't it? Have you made any suggestions as to how that can be amended to strengthen the institution?
Yes, like I said, we have drafted one and shared it with the Minister of Finance. That was a long way. It's a long way back.
You earlier talked about support in terms of capacity building that you get from other agencies. We know the EU, the AU, are good partners of the Gambia. Do you get any support from those entities?
Not directly. Not directly, because every support that comes for us through those institutions comes through the Minister of Finance.
Okay.
The only direct support that we get from our partners, currently we are supporting, World Bank is also supporting us through the Ministry of Finance. There's a project Ministry of Finance that has a component for audit scrutiny. So they are supporting us. Direct support with these things, no, it's never available. We almost all support that we get come through the Ministry of Finance. The natural entrance for support.
We are running out of time here. Quickly. Yes. The most talked about 600 million plus.
Yes.
Was a bitter pill for many. The controversy that surrounded it.
Yes.
Why actually that happened? Because at the end, it seems so much time have been spent by either your office, the OP, various ministries, and to explain why do we have to go into that route when, you know, in the first place, this thing could have been very explicit to the public.
For me, I think it is very explicit. People have not been reading. It is very clear in the report.
Are you saying we have a poor culture of reading in the country?
That's what I'm saying. It is very clear in the report. We said the account was opened in 2012. That was very clear.
Okay.
2012 did not find this regime there. It was a previous regime. That was very clear. We also said it was closed in 2017.
Okay.
When we asked them to close, it was closed. But when they reopened it again, we also said that. So for me, I don't see the controversy. We also explained what part was spent in the previous regime and also said what part was spent in the current regime. Yes. And I also said, look, it's not about the payment or who was paid from the account. It's about who opened the account. It was not supposed to be opened. That's in the first place. It was opened outside the normal system of accountability. It was out of the accountability system. That should not happen. Essentially, that was the issue.
The 2012 one and that of the 2017.
Yeah, both of them. Both of them. The one was also the same.
But in the report, you did say, you know, if, for example, you want to open this account, if you do the right procedures, you can open it. Yes. You did advise that.
Yes. And it is in the regulations. You needed permission from the accountant general to open this account.
Was that permission sake in the first place?
No. Accountant general is not aware of any disease of the account. It wasn't. They did not give the permission. Essentially, that was the issue. About the amount, that amount is not the issue because people may be genuinely paid from the account. I could be paid there. I said that in one of my interviews. I could pay there myself. I wouldn't know where the money is coming from. All that I would know is that I done a service and I'm paid. That's what it is.
Thank you very much. We are running out of time.
I think I just squeeze in something quickly, more generally.
30 seconds.
I mean, yes, we know that public sector auditing is really the weakest link of public financial management. So, in your experience, what are some of the factors that make it so difficult for this public sector auditing to be done right, for it to be a major component of public financial management?
I think we only need to complete the accountability cycle. Consequences for our actions. Once we have that, it will be finished.
Consequences for our actions.
Yeah,
fantastic.
Thank you. The best note to close on. Thank you so much, Mr. Karabature, the Auditor General. Thank you very much, my able co-host, Mr. Mboj. And viewers, thank you so much. Hopefully, Mr. Sise will be with us next week. And I thank you so much for taking your time. Bye for now.